I'm a 28-year-old guy and I've always been careful with money. I work a stable job, live within my means, and was saving up to buy my first home. My mother, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. She's 52 and has never been great with finances. She's the kind of person who constantly maxes out credit cards, takes out payday loans, and borrows money from family with no intention of ever paying it back. Despite all that, I wouldn't say she's a bad person. Growing up, she was loving in her own way, but she also had a habit of relying on others to fix her mistakes. She always had some kind of financial emergency, and someone in the family would bail her out. An uncle, a cousin, or even my grandparents. It became a cycle. She'd swear up and down that it was the last time, that she'd be responsible from now on. Then, months later, another crisis would come up, and she'd be right back at it. A year ago, she came to me with a request. She needed $20,000. She said it was for urgent home repairs, something about plumbing and a leaky roof, and she hinted at medical expenses. Though she was vague about it, she was adamant that this was a temporary situation and that she just needed a bridge to get through a tough spot. She swore she'd pay me back in 6 months. I hesitated. That was a lot of money. And it wasn't just sitting around. I had been saving for a down payment on a house, something I had been working toward for years. I told her that, but she just kept pushing. She pulled every emotional lever she could. She reminded me of everything she'd sacrificed for me growing up, how much she loved me, and how family helps family. She made it sound like I was being selfish for even hesitating. In the end, I gave in. I wired her the money, no written contract, just trust. She was my mother. I figured that had to count for something. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. She was cheerful, acted grateful, and even mentioned in passing that she had started setting money aside to pay me back. But as the 6-month deadline got closer, things changed. She stopped bringing it up, and when I casually mentioned it, she brushed it off with, "Don't worry, I haven't forgotten." Then she started avoiding the topic altogether. I asked for a timeline, and she suddenly had a million excuses. Unexpected bills had come up. She had been sick. Work had been slow. She just needed a little more time. The way she acted, you'd think I was asking for something unreasonable instead of the money she had promised to pay back. At first, I was patient. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But as time passed, it became clear that she wasn't making any effort to pay me back. She wasn't cutting expenses or budgeting. In fact, she seemed to be spending even more. She went on a weekend trip with friends. Then a few weeks later, she got a brand new phone. When the 1-year mark hit, I sat her down and told her we needed to talk. No more dodging. I needed a real plan for repayment. That's when everything took a turn. She got defensive immediately. Her whole demeanor changed, like I had insulted her by even bringing it up. She called me selfish, ungrateful, and said I was treating her like some kind of business transaction instead of my own mother. She said I didn't understand how hard things had been for her. Then she turned it around on me, asking how I could even think about demanding money from my own mother when she was struggling. The next thing I knew, the rest of the family started hearing about it, but not the real story, her version of it. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. According to her, I was hounding her for money she didn't have. She made it sound like I was harassing her, like I was kicking her while she was down. My aunt texted me, telling me I should let it go because it was just money. My older sister took my mom's side immediately, saying I was embarrassing her and acting cold-hearted. My grandparents called, suggesting that maybe I should compromise out of respect for my mother. The guilt tripping didn't stop there. My mom started making vague posts on Facebook about being abandoned after giving everything to her kids. People were commenting things like "stay strong" and "some people don't appreciate what they have." It was clear she was milking sympathy from everyone. At first, I tried explaining my side. I told my family that this wasn't some random handout. I had given her that money under the agreement that she'd pay it back. But no one wanted to hear it. In their eyes, I was being too harsh and should just let it go. That might have been the end of it, except for one thing. I found out my mom wasn't struggling like she claimed. She wasn't barely scraping by. She had been spending money like nothing was wrong. The vacations, the new phone, that was just the start. It made me wonder, where was all this money coming from? Then I remembered how she had a history of taking out payday loans and manipulating family members into helping her. She must have been juggling debts, borrowing from others, and possibly even hiding more income than she let on. I checked her social media and saw photos from a fancy dinner. A cousin mentioned she had been to a spa retreat. When I started really looking into it, the pieces fell into place. She had the money, she just didn't want to pay me back. That's when I knew this wasn't going to just blow over. If she thought she could guilt trip me into walking away from $20,000, she was wrong. And if my family wanted to take sides, fine. But I wasn't letting this go. The first message came from my aunt, a long text full of passive-aggressive concern, telling me to let it go because it's just money. She went on about how my mom had been through so much and how I should be grateful for everything she's done for me. Then, the classic guilt trip. She reminded me that family should come before money. Not even an hour later, my phone started buzzing with notifications. My mom was at it again. Another Facebook post, this time a vague one about some people forgetting the sacrifices their mothers made and how she never thought she'd be abandoned after giving everything. Comments flooded in. Distant relatives, old family friends, even neighbors were chiming in with their support, calling her strong and resilient. Some left comments like, Your son will realize one day, and a mother's love is priceless. It didn't take long before my siblings got involved. My younger brother, 24, sent me a message asking what was going on. He had seen the post and was confused. I explained everything, how she had borrowed the money, promised to pay it back, and was now acting like I was the villain. After hearing the full story, he was on my side. He agreed that she needed to be held accountable, and that the way she was handling it was manipulative. My older sister, though, completely different reaction. She called furious, saying I was embarrassing mom by dragging family business into the open. But then, for a brief moment, she hesitated. I mean, she should be paying you back, but you know how hard things have been for her. It was clear that she had doubts, but instead of confronting them, she pushed them aside and doubled down. You're still making things worse, she finally said, her voice sharp, like she was convincing herself as much as she was trying to convince me. She threw in the classic, "She's our mother. We owe her." Then my grandparents got involved. A call from them always meant one thing: they were trying to play peacekeepers. My grandfather, as expected, gently suggested that I compromise. He told me to be reasonable and that maybe mom just needed a little more time. My grandmother added that I shouldn't let money ruin the family. I explained, as calmly as possible, that this wasn't about money, it was about trust. I reminded them that she promised to pay it back, that she wasn't actually struggling, and that she was lying to the whole family. But they didn't want to hear it. They just wanted the drama to stop. Meanwhile, my mom was ramping up her act. She told anyone who would listen that she was barely getting by and that I was trying to put her on the street. The way she made it sound, you'd think I was taking food out of her mouth instead of just asking for the money she swore she'd repay. That's when I decided to start digging. I checked her Facebook again. She had posted pictures from another weekend trip, this time at a fancy resort. I scrolled through the comments. She was responding to people saying things like, "You deserve it," and "Treat yourself, queen." I found a post from a month earlier where she had mentioned getting a new designer purse. Another where she was out at a high-end restaurant with friends. That was enough for me. I started going through records, checking messages, even asking around. What I found was worse than I expected. Bank statements showing she had money coming in, but was spending it just as fast. A cousin let it slip that mom had recently bought new furniture for her living room. Another relative mentioned she had a spa membership. She wasn't struggling, she was lying. I decided it was time to confront her directly. I went over to her place and sat her down. I laid everything out: the vacations, the spending, the proof that she had money but chose not to pay me back. I told her I wasn't going to just let it go anymore. She needed to start making payments, or I'd have to take things further. That's when the tears started. The moment she realized she couldn't argue with facts, she switched tactics. She sobbed, asking how I could treat her like this, saying I was acting like a bank instead of a son. She called me cold-hearted, said I was trying to humiliate her, said she just needed me to be patient. When that didn't work, she tried to guilt-trip me, saying she had no options left. It didn't click for me at the time, but looking back, this was the moment she started crossing the line from emotional manipulation into outright deceit. If she was willing to lie about having money, what else was she willing to do? I didn't budge. I told her this wasn't negotiable. That's when she pulled her next move, going back to the family with a brand new story. This time, she told them I was threatening her. She made it sound like I had cornered her, demanded money she didn't have, and left her feeling scared and alone. And just like that, the texts started rolling in. Cousins, distant relatives, even family members I hadn't spoken to in years, were suddenly reaching out to tell me to be a good son. I got messages saying I should be ashamed, that I was breaking my mother's heart, that money wasn't worth losing family over. At that point, it became clear no one was going to hold her accountable. No one wanted to deal with the truth. They just wanted things to go back to normal, even if that meant letting her get away with it. But I wasn't letting this go. Not anymore. The next big piece of this mess came from an unexpected source. My cousin, the same one who had casually mentioned my mom's new furniture a while back. This time, he had something bigger. He worked in finance, so he knew how to track money and manage accounts. While we were talking, he let it slip that my mom had recently received a small inheritance from an elderly relative. Nothing massive, but definitely more than enough to start paying me back. I asked him how he knew, and he said she had mentioned it in passing during a family gathering a few months back. No one thought much of it at the time because she acted like it was a modest amount, just enough to help her get by. I looked into it, and sure enough, it was real. She had received a decent sum, around $30,000, more than enough to settle her debt, but instead of using it responsibly, she had spent at least $15,000 within the first few months on luxury items, vacations, and treating herself. When I confronted her, she acted as if the money had never existed, brushing it off like it wasn't the reason she was supposedly struggling now. A new luxury purse, a spa retreat, a few shopping trips. A cousin even recalled her talking about finally treating herself after all the stress she had been under. She had money. She just didn't want to pay me. I confronted her again. No more dancing around it. No more small talk. I laid it all out. The inheritance, the spending, the fact that she had enough to start paying me back but hadn't even tried. Her response? She shrugged it off and said she needed a break after all the stress I had put her through. According to her, all the family drama had been so exhausting that she deserved to do something nice for herself. I wasn't playing games anymore. I told her if she wasn't willing to pay me back voluntarily, I wanted a legally binding agreement, something in writing, so there were no more excuses, no more delays. That set her off. She went from dismissive to furious in seconds, yelling about how I was treating her like a criminal and acting like she was some stranger instead of my own mother. She called me a heartless child, slammed a chair into the table, and stormed out of the room. An hour later, my sister called. She wasn't just angry, she was livid. She said I had gone too far, that I was embarrassing our mother and making her look bad in front of the family. She didn't care about the inheritance, the vacations, or the expensive shopping trips. All she cared about was the fact that I had dared to bring legal talk into this. But this time, I wasn't the only one who was done. My younger brother, who had been neutral up to this point, had seen and heard enough. He called me, furious, not at me, but at our mom. The inheritance was the last straw for him. He told me he was completely on my side now, and that mom had lost all his respect. Then came the Facebook meltdown. Another vague post, but this one more aggressive than before. It was about how some children only see their parents as wallets, and how no matter how much you give, they always demand more. The comments were a mess. Some family members jumped in to support her, but others started asking questions. A few of them must have seen my previous posts about the money she owed me, because some people started commenting things like, "Didn't you borrow money from him? And what about the trips you've been taking?" She deleted those comments almost immediately. That's when I realized just how badly she wanted to control the narrative. She wasn't just avoiding responsibility, she was actively trying to make me the villain. I decided to get some real advice. I called a lawyer and explained everything. The money, the verbal agreement, the inheritance, the social media manipulation. I wasn't sure what my options were, but I needed to know if I could actually take legal action. The lawyer didn't sugarcoat anything. Without a written contract, it would be a tough case, but not impossible. There were still ways to push for repayment, especially with all the evidence I had. I needed to decide if I was willing to take that step. Before I could even fully process it, my mom made her next move. I got a call from my landlord. Apparently, my mom had contacted them, claiming that I was unstable and that they should keep an eye on me. At first, my landlord seemed uncertain, asking if everything was all right. I explained the situation calmly, even offering proof of her manipulations. Thankfully, he understood and assured me that unless there was an actual issue with my tenancy, there was nothing to worry about. It was clear she was trying to sabotage my living situation, but I wasn't about to let her win. She was willing to go this far, risking my housing, my stability, just to avoid accountability. I blocked her. No more contact, no more chances. If she wasn't going to act like a mother, I wasn't going to act like a son, and if she wasn't going to pay willingly, I was going to make her. I called my lawyer back and told him to move forward. The fallout started immediately. Word spread through the family fast. Some relatives were shocked, some were furious, and some just didn't want to be involved. My sister called again, yelling that I was destroying the family. My brother, on the other hand, told me he was proud of me for standing my ground. And my mom, she doubled down. She played the victim harder than ever, claiming I was dragging her to court just because she couldn't give me money right away. She kept twisting the story, making it sound like I was cruel and unreasonable, while she was just a struggling mother being persecuted by her own child. But it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't letting this go. The moment my landlord told me my mom had called to warn them about me, I knew I was done. There was no coming back from this. She had already spread lies to my family, twisted the story online, and now she was trying to mess with my housing. I blocked her. No more texts, no more calls, no more Facebook posts popping up in my feed. I cut her off on everything. It took less than a day for her to lose it. First, she called my job. My boss pulled me aside, looking uncomfortable, and said my mother had phoned in with concerns. Apparently, she had told them she was worried about my mental state and hinted that I might be unstable at work. Thankfully, my boss wasn't an idiot. He could tell this was personal drama spilling into my professional life and assured me it wouldn't be a problem. He even joked that he'd seen worse family meltdowns. Still, it was embarrassing knowing she was trying to ruin my reputation wherever she could. Then, the family group chat exploded. My sister, along with a few aunts, started messaging, saying we needed to talk. It was framed like they wanted to mediate, but the second I joined, it became clear what was actually happening. I was being ambushed. Every message was some version of the same thing. I was abandoning my own mother. I was overreacting. I should just let it go. One aunt even wrote, "She's your mother. You should be grateful she even raised you." My sister led the charge, acting like I was committing some horrible betrayal. It didn't matter that our mom had lied, manipulated, and tried to sabotage my life. None of that was relevant to them. All they saw was a son refusing to take care of his mother. I left the group chat. My brother, on the other hand, had officially hit his limit. He called me and told me he was done too. He had already been distancing himself, but this was the final straw. He blocked her, stopped answering my sister's calls, and refused to entertain any of the drama. That's when my mom escalated again. She went full blast on Facebook. Not just one post, multiple. She wrote long, dramatic paragraphs about how some children turn their backs on their parents, how she had given everything for her kids, only to be treated like a burden. She made herself look like a struggling, abandoned mother. People started commenting, offering their support. Some were distant relatives. Others were just random Facebook friends who had no idea what was really happening. A few people posted things like, "A mother's love is unconditional, too bad some kids forget that, and karma will handle the ungrateful." I knew what she was doing. She wanted me to feel guilty, to crack under pressure, to cave. Instead, I dropped the receipts. I made my own post, straight to the point, no emotion, no drama, just facts. I posted screenshots of the messages where she had promised to pay me back, the ones where she had asked for the loan. I included screenshots of her vacations, the expensive purchases, the inheritance proof. I didn't write a long rant. I didn't call her names. I just laid out the evidence and let it speak for itself. The response was immediate. Some family members were shocked, but others hesitated. While a few messaged me privately, admitting they had no idea she had been lying, many tried to stay out of it at first. Some relatives still defended her, but I noticed their responses started shifting from full support to cautious silence. Over time, as more evidence came out, those who once backed her began distancing themselves. My sister was furious, calling me petty for airing family business online. A few relatives still insisted I was in the wrong, saying I should have just kept quiet to keep the peace. It didn't matter. The legal papers were filed. I sent her an official demand for repayment through my lawyer. It was no longer just a personal dispute. It was a legal matter now. That's when she tried a new tactic. She sent me a long email, dramatic, emotional, filled with guilt tripping. She begged me to end this war because it was destroying the family. She wrote about how hurt she was, how she never thought her own son would treat her this way. She kept talking about family loyalty and how I was humiliating her. I didn't respond. When emotional manipulation failed, she switched to threats. A few days later, she started hinting that she was going to take legal action against me for harassment. She told my extended family that I was suing her because she refused to keep giving me money. She flipped the entire situation, making it sound like I was the one draining her finances. Some family members backed away. They didn't outright support her, but they also didn't want to get involved. Others started realizing she had been lying the whole time. The narrative she had built was starting to crack. And then she pulled one last desperate move. She showed up at my workplace. I was in the middle of a meeting when the receptionist messaged me, saying there was a woman in the lobby asking to speak to me. My stomach dropped. I already knew who it was, before they even said her name. I walked out to the front desk, and there she was, crying, causing a scene, sobbing loud enough for people to stare. She begged me to talk, saying she just wanted to fix things. I didn't say a word. I turned around and walked back to my office. Security escorted her out. That was the last time I saw her in person. The lawsuit was officially moving forward. There was no turning back now. The legal process had officially begun, but my mom wasn't going to make it easy. The first legal notice was sent, and she ignored it. Then another. Still nothing. She acted like none of it existed, dodging calls from my lawyer and even trying to delay things by claiming she needed more time to find representation. It was a stalling tactic, but the courts weren't going to let her drag it out forever. She wasn't answering calls from my lawyer, wasn't responding to any documents. It was clear she thought that if she ignored it long enough, it would just go away. It didn't. After multiple attempts, a court date was officially set. That's when she started scrambling. The first sign of trouble came from an unexpected place. My father, the man who had walked out on us when I was a kid, the man I hadn't heard from in years. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I got a message from him asking to talk. It didn't take long to figure out why. My mom had reached out to him, spinning her usual sob story. According to her, I was ruining her life, trying to take everything she owned, and she needed his help. She had convinced him that this was some kind of family emergency, that only he could talk sense into me. He called, acting like a concerned father. He started with the usual small talk, pretending to care about my life, but it was obvious where the conversation was going. He wanted me to drop the case. He talked about how family fights shouldn't go this far and how this isn't how we solve problems. I shut it down immediately. I reminded him that he hadn't been around for any part of my life. So why now? Where was this sudden concern when I was growing up? He had nothing to say to that. Mom must have realized that plan wasn't working because she changed tactics again. She told the family that I wasn't just suing her, I was trying to have her evicted and take everything she owned. She made it sound like I was trying to put her on the streets, like I was coming after her house, her belongings, her entire life. That of course set off another wave of family drama. More texts, more phone calls, more relatives reaching out, acting like I had lost my mind. But by now I was ready for it. I dropped more receipts. I posted a simple, straightforward update explaining that I had never once threatened eviction. The only thing I had ever asked for was repayment of the money she borrowed. I even attached proof, the original agreement, the ignored repayment deadlines, the vacations, the expensive purchases. That's when things really started shifting. Some aunts and cousins who had been neutral, or even slightly on her side, started pulling away. A few even called her out. One aunt asked in the family chat why my mom had money for luxury items but none for repaying her own son. A cousin pointed out that my mom had spent more on vacations in the past year than what she owed me. Mom tried to backtrack, saying it was all just misunderstandings, but it was too late. The damage was done. The court date arrived. I showed up with my lawyer. She showed up alone. She looked exhausted, wearing an outfit that was clearly chosen to make her look as pitiful as possible. The case started, and my lawyer laid everything out: how she borrowed the money, how she had promised to repay it, how she had ignored every attempt to settle things privately. We had documentation, bank statements, social media posts, everything. She tried to play the struggling mother card. She talked about how hard it was to be a single mom, how she had always put her children first, how this lawsuit was breaking her heart. She made it sound like she had wanted to pay me back, but life had just been too difficult. The judge wasn't buying it. When my lawyer presented the evidence of her reckless spending, the trips, the expensive shopping, the inheritance money she had hidden, the judge's expression changed. He asked her why she hadn't used any of that to pay back even a portion of the loan. She fumbled for an answer, saying she had needed to take care of herself after all the stress. The judge made it clear: a loan is a loan. It didn't matter if I was her son. She had taken money under the promise of repayment, and she had failed to do so. Then, in the final stretch of the hearing, she pulled her last move. She started crying, not quiet tears, loud, dramatic, gasping for air crying. She begged me to drop the case, saying she never thought it would come to this. She turned to me in front of everyone and pleaded, asking if I really wanted to destroy our family over money. I didn't respond. The judge wasn't moved. He ruled in my favor. My mom was officially ordered to start making payments. As soon as we stepped out of the courtroom, she turned on me. No more tears, no more just pure anger. She stormed out, calling me a disgrace to the family loud enough for everyone to hear. But it didn't matter anymore. She had lost. The court had ruled. My mother was legally required to start making payments, but of course she wasn't going to just accept it. Instead of following the court order, she immediately went into damage control. She told anyone who would listen that I had won on a technicality and that the ruling was unfair. According to her, the judge had been biased, and she was set up to fail. Then she played the classic card: she couldn't afford the payments. The court had established a structured repayment plan, breaking the amount down into reasonable monthly installments. It wasn't an outrageous number. It was something she could manage if she cut back on spending. But the moment the first payment was due, she claimed she had no money. That's when my sister exploded. She called furious, saying I had humiliated our mother in front of everyone. She blamed me for dragging her into court, saying I should have just let it go. She made it clear she was fully on Mom's side and wasn't interested in hearing anything else. Then, Mom took it to the next level. She created a GoFundMe. The title: Legal Fees. After heartless son sues his own mother. She wrote a sob story about how she was being attacked by her own child, and how she had sacrificed everything for me, only to be taken to court like a criminal. She made it sound like she was about to be homeless, like I had ruined her life just for a little money. It spread quickly. Some family members donated. A few family friends who clearly didn't know the full story left supportive comments. But not everyone was buying it. Some people mocked her for trying to crowdfund a debt she legally owed. Others started asking questions. Why wasn't she paying back the money she borrowed? What had she really spent it on? Then my brother stepped in. He had been quiet since the court case, but this was too much. He publicly called out the GoFundMe as a scam. He posted screenshots of the court ruling, proving that this wasn't about legal fees, but about avoiding debt. He made it clear that she had the means to pay, but was refusing out of spite. It turned into a full-blown online fight. My sister jumped in, defending Mom. More relatives got involved. Some took my brother's side, calling out Mom's history of financial irresponsibility. Others doubled down, saying it was just money and I should forgive and forget. Then, enough people flagged the GoFundMe that the platform reviewed it. Shortly after it was taken down, Mom, realizing she wasn't going to get free money, switched to another plan. She started selling her old furniture and family heirlooms for cash. She framed it as downsizing but made sure to tell everyone that she was selling her memories because of what I had done to her. And then another piece of the puzzle came out. A cousin, the same one who had tipped me off about her inheritance, reached out again. He had checked into some financial records and discovered something huge. Mom had savings, not a massive amount, but enough that she could have started paying me back. She had just hidden it. The reason? My sister had been helping her move money around. That was the final betrayal. My own sister had known all along that Mom had the means to pay, but instead of telling the truth, she had helped her avoid responsibility. At that point, I seriously considered going back to court. If Mom was actively hiding money to avoid a court order, that was fraud. Then, out of nowhere, Mom made one last move. She offered me a deal. She suddenly wanted to negotiate. She said she would pay back some of the money if I agreed to drop all legal action. She framed it as a way to keep the peace in the family. I refused. No more deals. No more half measures. She was going to pay back every cent. That was the moment the family rift fully solidified. My sister and I barely spoke anymore. Some relatives had cut my mom off, realizing how manipulative she had been. Others still defended her, convinced she was the victim. But for me, I was done. I focused on my future. No more guilt, no more worrying about what the family. It didn't take long for my mother's situation to spiral. The first court-ordered payment came due, and of course she didn't make it. No partial payment, no attempt, nothing. Just complete radio silence. That was all my lawyer needed to escalate things. A motion was filed to start garnishing her wages and seizing any assets that could go toward repayment. She had run out of ways to stall, but instead of dealing with the consequences, she tried another tactic, going off the books. She started working under-the-table jobs to avoid garnishment. A cousin who still kept tabs on her mentioned that she was bragging to friends about how she was beating the system. According to her, she had figured out a way to make money without the courts touching it. But her lifestyle didn't change. She was still going out, still dining at nice restaurants, still finding ways to spend on things that weren't essential. That's when my sister reached out again. She was desperate. She told me mom was barely getting by and that the legal case was ruining her. She wanted me to drop everything, to just let it go because enough damage had been done. I ignored it. Meanwhile, my cousin updated me on the GoFundMe. At first, her GoFundMe gained some traction, mostly from distant relatives and Facebook friends who didn't know the full story. But as more people started questioning her, donations slowed. Then, after multiple reports, the platform reviewed it and shut it down for violating its terms. No one was throwing her money like she had hoped, and the backlash only made her situation worse. And then, more cracks started forming. Relatives who had initially supported her were now backing away. The constant lies, the failed crowdfunding, the under-the-table jobs, it was all catching up to her. More and more people stopped answering her calls. Some family members even messaged me privately, admitting they had been wrong about her. Then the real financial hit came. Her reckless spending had caught up with her bank. Her credit score took a nosedive, and her account was put on hold due to multiple missed payments on her credit cards. Suddenly, she wasn't just dealing with my lawsuit, she was dealing with debt collectors. Apparently, she had taken out payday loans to cover some of her legal fees. But instead of paying them back, she had defaulted on them too. Now those companies were after her. Then came her next public meltdown. She went on Facebook again, but this time it was different. Instead of playing the victim, she went on a full rant. She talked about being betrayed by her own blood, how she had given everything only to be abandoned. She raged about how some people, me, obviously were so obsessed with money that they'd destroy their own family. The usual people left their supportive comments, but it was a lot less than before. More people just stayed silent. Meanwhile, my brother had seen enough. He officially cut contact with her. He packed up and moved to another city, wanting nothing to do with the drama. And then, out of nowhere, my mom reached out to me. For the first time in months, she sent me a message. It was a long emotional text about how she missed her son, how she wanted to make things right, how she didn't want things to be like this anymore. A cousin tipped me off about what was really happening. She wasn't apologizing because she had changed. She was apologizing because she was about to be evicted. With her accounts frozen, her credit tanked, and debt collectors breathing down her neck, she was running out of options. She needed somewhere to go, and she thought I was still dumb enough to open my door to her. I told her she wasn't welcome in my life anymore. That's when she made her last move. She called my workplace again. This time, she tried a different angle, saying I was harassing her, trying to ruin her life, and that my employer should know the kind of person I was. It failed, miserably. My boss, who already knew the whole situation, just laughed it off. Security was alerted in case she tried to show up again, and that was that. And at that moment, I finally felt free. No more family guilt, no more worrying about what people thought, no more wondering if I had made the right choice. Cutting her off was the best decision I had ever made. 1 year later, everything had changed. I had bought my own home. No more saving for a down payment. No more stress about finances being tied up in someone else's mess. My career was thriving, and without family drama dragging me down, life was the most peaceful it had ever been. My mother, on the other hand, had completely spiraled. She had officially lost her apartment. The eviction notice finally caught up with her after she failed to make rent for months. With her credit wrecked and no stable income, renting a new place wasn't an option. She had been couch surfing between relatives who still tolerated her, but even that was wearing thin. A cousin mentioned that she had been bouncing from house to house, never staying in one place too long. Some relatives felt sorry for her at first, but the longer she stayed, the more they realized what a burden she was. She refused to contribute, expected people to take care of her, and constantly made excuses for why she just needed a little more time. Even my sister, who had been her biggest defender, was struggling. After spending so much time covering for mom, financially and emotionally, her own situation had taken a hit. She had been helping mom hide money and avoid responsibility, but now that mom was completely broke, there was nothing left to shield. She refused to admit she had been wrong. Meanwhile, my brother was doing great. He had fully cut off mom and our sister, and had moved to a new city. He was in a healthy relationship, focused on his career, and had put all the toxicity behind him. He barely spoke about the situation anymore, and when he did, it was only to say how relieved he was to be out of it. As for the extended family, most people had moved on. The drama had died down. A few distant relatives still tried to guilt me whenever they had the chance, throwing in lines like, "But she's still your mother," or "One day, you'll regret this." I ignored them. The majority, though, had started seeing her for what she really was. Her reputation was ruined. No one in the family trusted her with money anymore. She had burned too many bridges, made too many promises she never kept. Even the relatives who had defended her at first had backed away, realizing she was never going to change. Then, out of nowhere, she tried a new tactic. She started telling people she had a mystery illness. A cousin reached out and said mom was now claiming to have some kind of serious health issue. No specifics, no diagnosis, just vague mentions of not feeling well and how she needed help. She was clearly trying to gain sympathy, hoping that someone would feel bad enough to throw money her way. It didn't work. This time no one stepped up. The relatives who used to give her money had learned their lesson. They weren't falling for it anymore. With nowhere left to turn, she tried to get back into my life. She sent a message, acting like a completely different person. She said she had changed, that she had been doing a lot of self-reflection, and that she wanted to rebuild our relationship. She talked about how much she missed me, how she just wanted us to be a family again. I gave her one response. I told her if she really wanted to make things right, she could start by paying back what she owed. Silence. She never responded. She didn't even try to negotiate this time. The moment she realized I wasn't going to let her slide back into my life without accountability, she disappeared. The next day, another Facebook post went up. Another vague, dramatic status about some people never forgiving their own family. I ignored it. Then karma hit again. A cousin let me know that my mom's credit cards had finally been cut off. Whatever little financial flexibility she had left was now completely gone. And then, the final unexpected message came. A random DM from someone I didn't recognize. It was a debt collector, trying to track her down. I blocked them. Not my problem. And with that, I moved on. No more guilt. No more family drama. Just happiness. For years, my mother had lived for Facebook drama. Every problem, every complaint, every attempt to guilt someone into giving her money, it all played out online. But then, all of a sudden, she vanished. No dramatic posts, no vague statuses about betrayal, no pity-baiting comments, just silence. At first, I ignored it. Maybe she had finally given up, or maybe she was just too broke to keep up the act. Either way, I didn't care. But then, a few worried relatives started reaching out, asking if I knew what had happened to her. I didn't, and I wasn't planning on finding out. Then, my sister broke the silence. She called me, something she hadn't done in months. She wasn't yelling this time. She wasn't demanding I forgive mom. Instead, she sounded rattled. Our mother had been arrested. I almost didn't believe it at first. It sounded too ridiculous, even for her. But when my sister explained what happened, it all made sense. She had been forging checks. Apparently, after burning all her bridges and maxing out every possible financial option, she started scamming elderly relatives for cash. In hindsight, I should have seen it coming. She had always been borrowing money from family, and I had even heard whispers that she had rewritten check amounts before. But this time, she had crossed the line from financial irresponsibility into outright criminal behavior. She took advantage of the few people who still trusted her, convincing them to write her checks for emergencies and then altering the amounts. In some cases, she even stole blank checks and wrote them out to herself. One of the victims was an elderly aunt, who had always defended her. Another was a distant cousin's grandmother, who hadn't even realized what had happened until the bank flagged suspicious activity. It had all come crashing down when one of them reported her. The police got involved, and after a short investigation, they had enough evidence to arrest her for fraud. Family reactions were mixed. Some relatives were shocked, saying they never thought she'd go that far. Others weren't surprised at all. A few even said she deserved it. Then, the inevitable happened. A letter arrived in my mailbox, handwritten, from her. She had reached out from jail. It was exactly what you'd expect. A desperate plea for help. The letter was long, emotional, full of dramatic lines about how she never meant for things to go this far, and how she only did what she had to do to survive. She talked about how lonely she was, how she missed me, how family should stick together, what she didn't do. Acknowledge the debt. There was no real apology, no acceptance of responsibility, just an endless attempt to guilt me into feeling bad enough to help her. And of course, the main request, she wanted me to bail her out. I threw the letter away. She wasn't in there long. She managed to get a plea deal, reducing her sentence to just a few months. But before she got out, my sister made one last attempt to reel me back in. She begged me to visit mom, saying she had learned her lesson, that she was a changed person, that she needed support. I refused. I had given her enough chances. She had spent years proving exactly who she was. There was nothing left to say. Then, release day came, and the first thing she did, she went right back to Facebook. She didn't post about taking accountability. She didn't post about making things right. Instead, she made a dramatic status about forgiveness. Something about how everyone deserves a second chance, how some people hold on to hate instead of healing, and how she was choosing to move forward with love. She didn't name me, but it was obvious what she was trying to do. It was another attempt to guilt trip, to make herself look like the bigger person while painting me as the one who refused to let go of the past. The difference this time, no one cared anymore. Most of the family had moved on. People who used to defend her barely engaged. A few left polite comments, but no one was jumping in to save her. I blocked her. I blocked my sister. I blocked anyone still trying to pull me back into the mess. For the first time in my life, I was completely free. No more guilt, no more manipulation, no more family drama, just peace. And honestly, that was the happiest ending I could have asked for.